Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be talking about Shang-Chi in its second weekend now, having a 67% drop-off from last weekend's Friday, which means the film is less likely to have the 47% drop that was being projected by some industry experts. The original projection for the weekend was that it was going to make around $40 million. That has now dropped off a bit to closer to $30 million, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means for the future of this film as far as the percentage and likely results going forward. And also, we are continuing to watch whether or not this film is going to be able to do anything in the international marketplace, which is at this point the only thing that would keep the movie from having any type of financial success at this point. Because remember, just because a movie is hitting a certain number at the box office does not mean that it's hit net gain or break-even territory. This movie, when you take all of the things into account, as far as how much the studio gets, as far as how much the film cost with marketing, it has to make around $375 million worldwide in order for the film to actually reach that break-even mark. And so we'll find out, of course, tomorrow what the official worldwide second weekend drop-off is. And I'll be able to do some of my maths to be able to make those predictions. But before going any further, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button. If you're watching over on Odyssey, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as we see from Forbes.com, from our buddy, Scotty Boy Mendelson, King Shill himself, he has here to say Shang-Chi performs like any Marvel movie and drops 67% on Friday. And this is true. This is a typical drop-off for a Marvel film. Sometimes we see it a little less. Sometimes we see it a little bit higher. Obviously, earlier this summer, you had Black Widow, which had the largest ever drop in the history of the MCU, dropping around 80% on that Friday to Friday drop. In this case, 67% drop is a lot more than what they were initially anticipating. However, it is still very much in line with other releases, and it is definitely not the worst case scenario for the film. As it says, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings topped the domestic box office for the second Friday in a row, earning $9.7 million for a $119.5 million domestic total, 67% drop from its $29.5 million opening day, which means that it's performing like a Marvel film. The 68% drop is more or less equal to the likes of Ant-Man, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Captain Marvel. Sure, it's a bigger Friday drop than Black Panther at 62%, and it's a better hold than Captain America Civil War and Black Widow. We're likely looking at a $33 million, 56% drop second weekend, which again is right in the realm of normal for a big Marvel movie. Now, what is very important for us to remember and to recognize is that even though that is very much typical for a Marvel film, it also is still something that those other films had something that this film does not, which is a much stronger showing in the international marketplace. And that, I think, is going to be, if this film ends up being a financial loss, which again, I'll be able to tell with a lot more surety tomorrow whether or not that is the case or not. But if it is a financial failure, it's going to be because of it not performing in the international marketplace. It is actually on pace to be one of the most successful domestic films released during COVID times, which again is something that is pretty amazing to say the very least for a film that, as I've said previously from people that I've heard who've actually seen the film, for a mediocre film. People, again, some people really like it, some people hate it, some people are kind of in the middle. I've heard more people kind of in the middle on this movie. It's just interesting that this is the kind of film that is going to be making that kind of money, but it is what it is. Let's go ahead then and look and see what he has to say, because it's interesting how he kind of like glosses over the fact that in this article he actually admits to what I call out in a few videos ago, where I called out the whole Labor Day lie, right? This whole, oh man, this film so much destroyed Labor Day and set so many records. It kind of gives it away as to why it was actually pretty easy for this film to do so. It says the 56% drop would be right on par with previous big Labor Day openers such as Transporter 2 and Jeepers Creepers 2, and it's a better hold than Rob Zombie's Halloween, which was a 62% drop from a $30.5 million debut in 2007. So he just basically admits the big releases for Labor Day, and this is the reason why anyone who's trying to spin this film as a massive, specifically a massive Labor Day success, is really just not being honest with themselves, because when you're going up with the likes of the sequel to The Transporter and the sequel to Jeepers Creepers and Rob Zombie's Halloween, to try and say that the Marvel Disney machine is not going to somehow wipe the floor with any of those movies would just be, again, would be a lie at that point. No one in their right mind would ever say that, even for a film that someone might hate or someone might think isn't going to do as well as some of the others, would never say that the Disney machine cannot produce even favorable results for bad movies. Case in point, Captain Marvel made over $1 billion because they were able to position that film right in time to get enough people excited for Endgame and to make it feel like you needed to see that movie to keep the storyline going and to know everything you needed to know before going into Endgame. They were able to do that marketing, get that timing and placement just right, which of course led to that film being over $1 billion. But that is not really what they have going on here with Shang-Chi, but they could have released, the point is, any other MCU film, and it would have been a record-breaking film. Any other MCU film. They could have even put out, and this is obviously even before the Disney machine, they could have put out Incredible Hulk around the same time, and it probably would have been a record-breaking because of just the nature of these types of movies and how studios for decades and decades have avoided this weekend because it just doesn't do as well in comparison to others. And so, even though the film is doing well based off of the standards compared to Transporter 2 and Jeepers Creepers 2, that does not mean that the film is financially successful, because financial success means net gain, net profit, and guess what? It is not at that point yet. No matter how much you like or dislike the film, that is just the financial fact at this point in time. It goes on to say that, as we saw with John Krasinski's and Emily Blunt's A Quiet Place Part 2 this past May, solid weekday grosses may have siphoned off second weekend earnings, as folks who wanted to check it out or see it again after the holiday weekend already did so. That's not a problem, as the overall grosses are perfectly strong, and Shang-Chi would love to have a post-debut multiplier on par with A Quiet Place Part 2, which again breaks into what that film did. In the end, though, what he thinks is likely going to happen is that if things stay where they are, it says if we're looking at $143 million 10-day total, putting it within the same time frame or distance as Sonic the Hedgehog, and if we have a split by Sunday between around 53 and 47%, that it will have around $267 million worldwide by tomorrow night. And then, presuming that it does not completely collapse, this movie would be one of the first to top $200 million domestically since Bad Boys for Life, which did so back in January of 2020. Now, here once again is something that I think is being glossed over just a little bit. Notice how it says here, if by Sunday we have a split remaining of 53-47%, then we will be in that place. When you look at the numbers right now with what you see in the case of Shang-Chi, you're not really seeing that kind of a split going on. You're seeing a much heavier split here, right? 68% is the domestic share in comparison. So if by the end of the weekend we still see this film around $143 million, and let's say this jumps up to maybe $100 million or so, obviously at that point then there might be some discussions of it reaching that split. But the further it is away from that split, then that means the more difficult it's going to be for this film to make any money, because even though it is, again, we have to say, based off of what we find in pandemic times, it's a financial, at least a domestic success. Let's be careful with the language there. A domestic success in comparison to all other films coming out domestically. It is not yet really showing international numbers on the same level. Now, of course, sometimes it does take a little bit of time for international box offices to update their numbers. Some of them don't update until the end of the weekend. Some of them update incrementally over time and adjust things throughout the week. It really just depends on the country and depends on just the standards that they use. And everyone is just a little bit different. But again, there is an assumption that is being made there by what we're finding here from Scotty Bo Mendelson, which is that it will have a split of around 47%. And so if it again reaches around this number tomorrow night, if that is what they expect it to make, then we might be able to start making some indication. So let's take that number of $267 million. So this is my little box office sheet right here. Let's say that the film does get to $267 million, because let's just, again, do some maths on the fly. Don't worry, everyone. Maths cannot hurt you. And luckily, I have this sheet set up so that it does all the math for me with my equations. So let's assume that that is the end result number by the end of the weekend. Well, let's look ahead and see that that would actually have this film having made more money than Black Widow in its second weekend internationally. And again, I have some questions about that. If that was the case, then what we would see is that a film like this would make anywhere between $381 million and $324 million. So again, the most that it would likely, the least that it would likely make would be around $324 million. The most that it would likely make would be around $381 million. And based off of what we have for the budgets, we are then likely looking at a film that is going to, in this case, if this again holds, somewhere between $3 and $30 million of a loss. Now, I think that my equations may have backed up there, but the point is that we're either going to see a very small a very small loss or a very small gain based off of the numbers that we have here is what we are looking at right now, if again that number holds. So normally I'm able to double check these numbers, but again I'm doing this live right now. But the point is that if this film holds, doing better than Black Widow in its second weekend in the total domestic international gross, and if it is able to consistently hold that out even just a little bit, then it is going to set itself up to make a little bit of cash, to make a little bit of money. However, that is a big if of whether or not it can get to that type of split and reach that $267 million by the end of its weekend run. When you look at the film right now being around $56 million, gets maybe a bit more of an ask there because of the fact if it only made $56 million in the international release and it's only releasing in Greece as far as a new country is concerned, for this film to somehow make twice or somehow double this number, I don't know. It would seem to indicate a little bit of, I don't know. It would be a little bit odd there. Obviously, you could argue about, the day-to-day totals adding up to it. So it's not just weekend to weekend, but maybe they made a little bit of money during the week. And so maybe you could get to that point, but it would still also just be a little bit weird for that to actually be the case overall. As you can see from Deadline, Shang-Chi, strong second weekend with $31 million. Once again, kind of under stating the fact that they originally said that the film was going to make somewhere between, around $40 million. So it's actually going underneath what they had originally projected for this film to make. But again, still very much strong for pandemic times, no doubt about it. This is also in lieu of the fact that Disney has officially announced that all of their remaining 2021 films will exclusively be released in theaters. Personally, I think that's a pretty bad move for a film like The Eternals, which cost as much as Black Widow did and is not likely going to have the same amount of success that Shang-Chi did, because obviously when you look at a movie like Shang-Chi, what they were able to do is try to focus on, this is a film made for a specific audience, and we're going to try and drive that specific audience out, even though it seems to be kind of offensive to assume that you're going to target an audience and try and get them to come out because you're going to assume that just because someone looks like someone else on screen that that's a reason to go see a movie. I don't know. I don't quite get that altogether, but hey, looks like it worked out for them as far as Shang-Chi is concerned, despite obviously some of the dubious natures going on there. But they obviously think that they're going to be able to do at least something similar with films like The Eternals or films like West Side Story, etc. So again, we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens with that. We also have a little bit of box office news looking ahead for the long-range box office forecast for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. So this is the next film that I know a lot of people are looking forward to. And as of right now, this film, which did indeed move up its release date, probably because of what was going on with Shang-Chi, is expected to make somewhere between $45 and $65 million domestically for an end total of $100 to $140 million. And so once again, interesting that that movie is not expected to do nearly as well as Shang-Chi did. Maybe it'll be able to somehow flip the story, flip the script a little bit, overperform in certain ways. Obviously, I know a lot of people who are going to want to say, let's get this film to beat Shang-Chi, because again, I know that that's just the mindset that some people might have when they look at these early estimates and these early numbers here. But it is interesting, right, that the movie is not set to be this massive financial hit. And we've been told, at least the indication, it seemed the indication as of last week, was that the box office was back, baby. And again, numbers just really don't pan out all that well for that being the case, because when you look at a film like Venom 2, you're looking at another $150 to $200 million film. This is probably a film that is likely, just based off of the nature of the story, to do well, or at least to do better in the international marketplace than maybe a film like Shang-Chi would. But is that going to be enough? If these numbers hold, probably not. But Again, Shang-Chi was able to surprise in the domestic marketplace. Maybe we'll see something similar happen with a film like Venom 2, but we'll really just have to wait and see on this. But what are y'all's thoughts about these numbers? So obviously, we are still waiting for these numbers to officially update. Right now, it's at $175 million, but they do expect it to be somewhere between $200 million and $200, I believe. Scotty Boy Mendelson said around $263. If the 53 to 47 split holds, 267. So somewhere around 267 million is what they expect. So if this film has not reached $267 million this weekend, again, the further away from that number, the more likely that the film will be a financial flop. The closer to that number, the more of a guarantee of it making at least some money at the box office will actually be. And since I'll go ahead and show this in real time how I update this, so I'll go ahead and paste this number. This is the current box office for it. And with that, it means that the film right now is at $119 million of financial loss. Again, it's obviously going to change. It's obviously not going to be that high by the end of its run, but that is what the film is needing to recover right now. And that is why it is so incredibly important to find out what this week 2 drop-off is going to be. Not just the 67% that they're now projecting for the domestic market, but also what kind of drop-off we're going to see in the international marketplace as well. Is it going to be able to get up to that $100 million in the international box office? How close to that $100 million is it actually going to be able to do? Really, at this point, it's really anyone's guess. But if it does not perform as well in the day-to-day release during the week or on the weekend internationally, that is going to be its Achilles heel. It's already been confirmed that this film has really no chance of getting released in China because of things that have been said by the star, and I have to at least commend him for that, for speaking out against the commies in China. However, if he was really honestly truthful in his feelings and sentiments towards the commies in China, he wouldn't be doing this movie for a massive corporation that has done so many deals and so many films with China in the past, giving them hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars in that 75 to 25% split that happens with every major studio and every major release that gets put out in that country if you're from a Western market. But anyway, what are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that Shang-Chi is going to do it? Again, it's definitely possible. It's definitely within the realm of possibility, as I showed you. Again, because my charting was acting up just a little bit there. Sometimes sometimes when it's doing the auto predicting of the equations, it predicts the wrong one, and that's why I don't typically just do it live, because I want my mind focused on, okay, is this doing right? I got to make sure it's clicking the actual right number. But do you think the film is going to get to that $267 or so million or so in its second weekend when you look at all of the worldwide totals? Because if it does, as I said, that pretty much guarantees the film to make either a little bit of profit or a little bit more profit, somewhere between, I guess, $3 and $30 million in actual net gains, net profits. Or do you think it's going to underperform and potentially be on the losing side of things? Either way, I will say that having this film be projected to make somewhere around $200 million domestically does put this film in a better position than other movies, because it means that the loss on this movie likely will not be enough to be able to have this film not be able to make it up at some point in the future from VOD sales, from Blu-ray, 4K sales, etc. Because there is a group of people out there, as they attack this video and so many other videos that I've done, who obviously are very much fans of this movie, who want to support this movie, who will go out of their way to consume anything that is get put out by Disney and has the MCU attached to it. So we'll have to, of course, wait and see on these numbers, and I'll have that video tomorrow after I get home from Mass and those numbers finally break. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button. It really does mean a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Also, a huge shout out to Kara Tharp, and also I'm trying to think about my two one-time locals members and supporters over there. Brett D90 is the other. Brett D90 and Kara Tharp, thank you again very much for being one-time supporters over on locals.com. You guys are freaking awesome. And also, I've got a new person to shout out in the Patreon video, and I'll add that to the video today as well. You guys are all amazing beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my September Locals Patreon and Subscribe Star members. First with my Locals members, Cats App, D Sharp, It's a Modern Major General Story, Bifford the Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. I want to give a shout out to, especially to Laura, who is now a double supporter on Locals and on Patreon. So thank you for that. And to all of my Locals members. A shout out also to my Patreon members, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura the Modern Major General's story once again, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out also to my Subscribe Star members, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting the channel. And I want to give a huge shout out to new members, one-time supporters over on Locals, Kara Tharp, K Tharp 56, and Brett D 90. Thank you again for being a one-time supporter over on Locals, and also to my newest Patreon member, Stan Gunovic. And hopefully I pronounced that correctly, but thank you for being my newest members. It really does mean a lot. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single video or live stream on the main channel, please check out the links in the description below, specifically that top link, which will bring you to all of the links to my various social media pages and also places of support as well. And remember that if you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also get access to giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I have a live giveaway of Snatch on 4K Steelbook. I've also got ones for Dread, Wrath of Man Blu-ray. I've also got A Quiet Place Part 2 on 4K. I've got Top Gun on 4K, Sicario on 4K, tons of films and more to come, especially as more films are getting released for those giveaways. At the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. Not only do you get to listen to the podcast, you also get to ask questions that we answer as much as we can and as fully as we can in a much more, I guess you could say, uncensored way, but again, a much more free-flowing way for our members over there at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. And if you join the Chosen of Valhalla level, you get access to all of those things, plus in your first month, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, and I send it to you no matter where you are in the world. And also, you get to once a month be featured on the channel in the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we talk about movie, news, and pretty much anything that you want to talk about. So if that all sounds like fun to you, check out those links below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.